Okay, so we're going to make our bot move around through this maze and hit a few different navigation points that'll be denoted by what we have here with our double bots. Okay, I have 3 of them in this space. We'll go ahead and hit Alt P and get this thing fired up. It goes over there, touches that first one, travels all the way across, touches that second one, and he finally rests on the third one. So what we're going to be doing is making it so we can navigate this space without having to really tell him to do anything other than just go to those spots. Okay, so let's take a look at how we can make this happen. First thing we want to do is go into your bot pawn. Okay, and I've added one other piece onto this, which is the capsule collider, and that's just to give you a little bit better interaction with the things in your level. The capsule collider can be found over here to the side on the components list, where you hit add. You can just type in collision and you'll see all the other collisions that are there available to you. You can use a box, a capsule, or a sphere. The sphere is always going to stay a sphere, so you probably want to go with something that can be shaped around the actor that you have, the pawn that you happen to be using. In this case, I thought a capsule would work best, so I stretched it out so it would fit over the ground portion and all through the area where it's supposed to be floating. So if we do happen to touch something that would go underneath our bot, we actually will get to touch it anyway, so we'll overlap with it, is what we're going to find out we use a little bit later. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the event graph. Now, to make this work, we're going to need some variables, and you'll notice we start using those variables pretty quickly as we go through this, and they're not really that different. They're very similar to what we did before. We just need more of them. So let's go over here to the variables side. This is an object reference just like we did before for our actor. This is now named navpoint1, and then we're going to make another one just like we did before. We're going to make navpoint2, and just like you did previously, we just go in here, select the drop down, type in the name of the actor that you're going to be using as a reference, and in this case mine was a double, so you just select that, click on the object reference, you'll get what you need. I don't really need that one there, so you're going to make 4 of these. The last one, you'll notice it doesn't have the eye open, so it's not instance editable. That means that we're not going to set that inside of the editor. If we go back out here and we click on our bot, you notice over here on the side the default settings have different double bots in here as the nav points. So we're not setting the current nav point because we're going to do that in the code. Okay, so that's why we have that off right here. Okay, so first thing we're going to do, as soon as the game starts, we're going to work with event begin play, and it's going to go to a custom event. Okay, to get a custom event, you just drag off of whatever pin you want it attached to, or you can just click in this space. You can type in custom event. You got to, of course, spell it correctly, and just hit add custom event. Now, I want to make sure you guys understand, don't leave this name as is. If you do, you're going to start to have a lot of headaches later on. You're going to have a number of custom events as you start to program more inside UE5, so give it a name that means something. In this case, this is something I'm going to call every time I need it to move to the next nav point. So I could have called this move to next nav point, go to next nav point. In this case, I just called it seek next nav point. And when you want to call it, you just drag off the execution pin. This is where it actually helps to drag off the execution pin of the thing you want it to be related to, the event that it's kicking off. Then you would type in the name of it. So we do seek next nav point. You just click on that, and it will call that function or that bit of code again. Okay, now as far as this bit of code right here that seek next nav point is doing, it's the exact same code that we used previously with our bot going over to our actor. Nothing's really changed here. The only thing we were using differently is this current nav point right here. We just get a reference right here and tie it into our goal. And as I said before, this is going to change as we hit one nav point. The current nav point will change from nav 1 to nav 2 to nav 3 finally. Okay, so this is just going to get called every time we hit a new nav point. Okay, now right here we have what's going to be working all the time. This is going to be checking to see what are we colliding with. And we're colliding with the capsule. Remember, if we collided with the buggy bot or the default scene route, we would probably only get something that's up high or down on the ground. In this case, we want to catch anything we go across here. So if something is floating in the air and we touch it, we want to make sure it gets collision there with our collider. And so we want to highlight the capsule. We'll go in here and we'll do begin overlap. And we want to make sure that you have the one that goes with the capsule. that one is already being used, so it's not going to provide us a second one. We only get one in a blueprint, so we got to make sure we use that correctly. From there, we're going to cast to whatever we happen to touch. So casting is something where we check the information of whatever we collided with. And in this case, we're going to pull over from the other actor, the other thing we touched. We're going to connect it into the object. This is an object reference, just like we have here. And then from there, we're going to check about some, any kind of information we have about the actor. We can get the transform about the actor, the name of the actor, the materials on the actor. We can get a lot of information about it, so we can also alter things on the other actor if we want to. But in this case, we're just checking some things. From there, we want to see, is it the same nav point 1 that we're supposed to be going to? So we'll drag off of this, and we'll get an equals. And in this case, we're looking at something that is comparing. Just keep that in mind. A double equals is comparing. A single equals will be assigning. So if I said x double equals to 5, that means I'm checking, does x have a value of 5? And would that be equal to each other? If I just said x equals 5, then I'm assigning 5 to x. Okay, so there's something to keep in mind there. To get the other nav point reference right here, all I did was drag it out, and I got get right there. I don't want to set it or anything. I want to leave it as it is. Remember, we're setting it in the map. We're not going to set it in the code right here. So we compare these. Is that nav point 1 that I just touched? If it is, then this will return a Boolean variable of true. We'll go over here and we'll set our current nav point to the next one we want to go to, which is nav point 2, and then we'll call moving that function that will move us to that next nav point. Okay, when we touch it again, we'll go over through this same kind of setup. We'll check and see what touched the capsule. We'll cast to that actor. We'll check. All right, well, this one's not nav point 1, so we're going to get a false reading off of that. We'll go down to another branch. We'll still pull off of this actor down to here, and we'll compare it. Is it nav point 2? Yep, it's nav point 2. So the next one we're going to go to is nav point 3, so we need to change current nav point to nav point 3, and then we'll seek that nav point out, and we'll end up at our final nav point. Okay. Now, the one thing we haven't really done, other than possibly go in and set the nav points, if you haven't already done that, is set the first one to be nav point 1. We need current nav point to be set for nav point 1. To do that, we're going to go into our construction script. That's right up here at the top. If you go between viewport and event graph, that's our construction script. And this is going to initialize variables before we start. This is going to run before any bit of code in the event graph runs. So we want to drag off of this, and we want to grab current nav point. We want to set that. Okay. And then we want to grab a reference to nav point 1. And kind of like what we did in the event graph, we just want to connect those up, and we want to tell it like, hey, the first thing you're going to go to is nav point 1. Once you have all that set, your bot has all of the nav points already listed in here. Then what we can do is kick it off and make sure it runs. Okay, it goes to our first one, it goes to our second one, and it goes to our last one. Okay, this is one more step for you guys making video games and understanding how to set up systems of knowledge. So let's go ahead and jump into it.